as Nelly mentioned, my name is Magid. I was born in Somalia, which is a country in the east of Africa. And me and my family came to UK as refugees when I was 5 years old. And it's quite anywhere in the world, but we actually came and got resettled in Sheffield, in the UK. And in Sheffield, it's the first city of sanctuary in the UK, and basically means the first refugee settlement places in the UK. So it's got a very long, rich history in welcoming people from all across the world. And I guess like my experience in that aspect, I guess also kind of shaped a bit about my politics and even growing up in a working class community in Sheffield. And I guess coming from an environment where aspirations were quite limited, as you'd say, especially I don't think it's the neighborhood that I grew up in is very like unique in any other part of the world, because it's any socially deprived community has got a lot of similar challenges as it is, to be honest. And for me, like going to university was a big deal. And I remember really aspiring to go to university. And growing up, people always tend to ask me, Magid, who were your role models? Who did you really like look up to? And I really struggled to, I guess, find any like heroic figures or anything like that. But the two people that I guess kind of crop up in my mind is Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Rock. And the reason is because I had posters of them in my wall. And I don't know, you can say, well, Buffy was just some like kick-ass woman that just used to like slaughter vampires and whatnot. And The Rock, it was just like, I was into my wrestling and stuff like that. But it was quite funny because I was talking to my sister about it the other day, and it was, I guess that Western culture of having posters on your wall is not something that my mother was very accustomed to. So my mom could never really understand why I would have a woman with a dagger on my wall and a half-naked man in his underwear raising his eyebrow. And I'm like to explain, my mom, they're really cool, but she's like, but you don't know them. But long story short, anyway, I ended up going to university. I studied aquatic zoology. Don't ask me why. I just was interested in, I guess, in all honesty, I knew I wanted to go to university just because I knew the opportunities university was going to bring. And when it came to deciding what course I wanted to study, even though I didn't know what I wanted to pursue in life, and I would argue that I'm still trying to figure that out now, I went on the list of courses like A, accounting, B, business, and I got down to Z, zoology, and I thought, oh, that'll be quite interesting. And I thought aquatic zoology, and I'll be honest, I did enjoy the course, but it wasn't, I fully well knew that it wasn't something I was going to pursue as a career or anything like that. But it was at university where
Well, you never know, Magid, you never know. You might still like work with dolphins moving forward, or, you know.
Conservation, marine biology.
I mean, Green Party, after all, connection here, you know.
Yeah. But I got involved at university where I was really, I wouldn't even call it politics, because even when I was at university, I kid you not, I wasn't involved in party politics. I couldn't even tell you the difference between left and right. I knew I cared about the issues, like I wanted to eradicate the hidden costs of university fees. I wanted better sports provision for students. I wanted to campaign for free education. So I was more of an issues-based person. And then that kind of led me to get involved in my students' union campaign, and then got elected. And I did that for a year, and that kind of opened up a lot of different opportunities. But it was only once I actually left university and set up a business that completely failed. And I moved back to Sheffield, and I was working as a housing advisor for a charity called Shelter. And it was 2014, it was during the rise of UKIP, which are a right-wing group in the UK, which scapegoat migrants are always spouting hate and fear among people, especially to divide them. And I just remember thinking to myself at that time, at that European election in 2014, thinking there's just so much happening, so much negativity, so much like it's happening around the world. I thought, what can I do? So I thought, if I could at least make my small part of the world, my community, Sheffield, that bit better, that's at least me having some sort of contribution. And then that led me to literally go online and learn politics. I would go on YouTube and online just try and edge different ways. For me, I'm more like kind of visual person, so I would watch a lot of videos. I'd force myself to watch a lot of the politics programs so I understood. And then I started asking the questions in Sheffield, like who makes decisions? And it got to a point where I was really tired of asking the wrong people to do the right thing. But I just kind of got to a point I was quite fed up. So I thought, how can I get involved? Find out about my local council authority, what the councillor's role is. And I decided to join the Green Party purely because they were the only party that had a red line against austerity, that stood up for free education, that I guess a lot of my beliefs and what I'm accustomed to, but also the fact that we've only got one planet and we need to live within our means. So John Green Party stood to be a councillor, got elected, did that for 2 years. And I guess the role of a councillor, in my view, is just a glorified community activist. You're literally like working all hours throughout the day. There's no like clocking off or clocking on. So weekends people will call you like, I'm going to get evicted from my house. My landlord's evicted me. I've got a court and hearing. So then you'll have to kind of support them in that. And especially the more you put yourself out there, the more people will cling on to you and would want to have your help and support, because you end up being the only person that they see or can relate to having some sort of authority that can help them. Because in Sheffield, whether that be local politics or national politics, I find that people tend to not put themselves at the forefront of a lot of issues because they're happy to be in the background, so they don't have to be held to account or they don't have to be questioned. So that was an amazing experience. And then I guess I was like, what more can I do? And then the opportunity of Lord Mayor came about, so I put myself forward for that, then got elected for that. And then the opportunity of the European election was coming. And even though it wasn't something that was, it was so much uncertainty, like Brexit was happening in the UK, and the vote happened in 2016. But the reason I kind of put myself forward to become a candidate in the European election was because I was really tired of hearing the negative rhetoric, especially regarding the scapegoats of migrants. And my entire campaign slogan was "Immigrants make Britain great." And I literally told the entire county, Yorkshire and Humber, that I represented with that message. And 10 years ago, the region that I got elected in, elected a BMP, which is a far-right fascist MEP, to represent them. And then 10 years later, they kind of elected me as their MEP. And it was especially seeing people like Nigel Farage and all those other people, it kind of infuriated me because I just...
Maybe explain with Nigel Farage, because not everybody is familiar
Nigel
with the UK
Farage
politics.
was...
Because they are really an international group.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Nigel Farage was the leader of a political party called the Brexit Party. And they were xenophobic, Islamophobic, it's like they stood for everything that I didn't stand for, all the people of Sheffield. So I just generally believe that the country, the UK, had a better story to tell. And I was like, I just can't sit back and accept these people to be the storytellers, to be the authors of our future, when I knew that we had a better story to tell. So I was like, I want to kind of share that story. But then put myself forward and thankfully got elected. And it was a whole weird experience, in all honesty. Like, it's knowing that you might not be there to do a full 5-year term, because normally as a member of European Parliament, you've got a 5-year mandate. But with the whole situation in the UK and Europe, we didn't know how long we were going to be there. Even though I was really quite hopeful and optimistic that I'll be able to do the full 5 years. And it ended up being for basically 7 months. And like literally from tackling far-right issues, like from traveling to Italy to support anti-fascist groups and challenging Salvini, to supporting migrant NGOs, especially in the whole Mediterranean crisis, to also even literally like one of the works I'm quite proud of in the committee that I sat on was the Culture Committee, and I had the Creative Europe legislative file. And within that, I was basically just making sure that the Creative Europe program that the EU kind of was as inclusive as possible, basically. So there was a lot of legal linguists, and you kind of like negotiating different words, like should we change the word should to will, just so it's a bit more certain. So it was quite something. But I guess, in honesty, like a lot of, like I'd be lying to you if I was to say like a lot of things I've kind of accomplished are basically down to basically me and working hard, because we always know that working hard can only get you so far. And I always say I've been able to do the things that I've done because somebody actually cared for me whether that be when I was young, whether that be when we first came to UK, whether that be the people of Sheffield, my friends who grounded me, like there was sacrifices that made it. So it's just more than one person basically that kind of puts in that energy. That's why I was really grateful, and I try to owe in everything I do, especially it's so easy within, and would that be politics or like, especially going to the European Parliament, to completely get lost and forget the reason that you're in there to begin with. And like, you can easily get amazed by the structure and the way people treat you and everything like that. So for me, it was quite important that I stayed grounded. So in everything I do, I'd always come back to the grassroots and activists within my region that I represented, as well as different parts of Europe, just to kind of make sure that I wasn't like going ahead with that, basically truly representing people. So it was amazing, and I guess I learned so much. And at the same time, it's like fair enough. Like Britain may have left the European Union, but the same reasons that I was fighting to remain in the European Union, those fights are still going to exist. Like the fight to have a more sustainable world, the fight to kind of eradicate and hatred in every form. All of that is still there. Fair enough. It won't be within the prism of a European Union or European Parliament, but like within my community in Sheffield, my region, Yorkshire, the UK, those fights are still going to be there to be had. So like, I've always been an activist first and foremost, and I guess I'll always be an activist going forward. And like my friend was asking me, the other day, there's a friend I've not seen for a while, and he was saying like, imagine like, where do you get ahead? How do you end up like being so unapologetically yourself in an environment that doesn't allow or wasn't necessarily designed for people like yourself to kind of be truly yourself? And I guess like there's an aspect of death. I know it sounds really weird, but for me, like death has always played a part in my thinking in terms of like the fact that we're all going to die one day. So it was always a case of, I've always had to learn how to die in order to learn how to live, basically. So like on a daily basis, I would kind of be like, I need to like, that be killing my fears, the conformity, the indifferences that stop me from doing what I think is the just thing to do. And like, I'd always get it, like without being the council in Sheffield, the European Parliament, people, I guess, would always say like, oh, Magid, maybe, you should kind of tone it down, or you shouldn't necessarily be a bit too political. And I was like, I haven't got the privilege to not be too political. Like, excuse me, but I'm someone who's a Black Muslim refugee growing up in an environment that is, so I was like, I can't, even if it may not necessarily affect me, that be the transgender community, the LGBT community, like so many different communities that I'm not necessarily prescribed to, even though it does not affect me, it's within my duty as a human being to kind of support and kind of fight against those injustices, because that's saying an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So for me, it was just a case of like staying silent and trying to preserve the status quo and just trying to go along with things. It's just something that I was never going to do, basically. So even from the get-go, I kind of knew I was necessarily not even a battle against like other people and structures. A lot of the time it was against myself, because it was like trying to find the courage to do certain things and stuff. So it was a very interesting time, and it was, yeah, a lot of lessons learned, basically. But if there was one thing I would say I felt that I was missing in politics, it is the word compassion. And I think compassion isn't something that's talked about quite a lot in politics. And I think it's something that was completely forgotten. And I think in terms of the European Union project, I think compassion is what at the end of the day is going to either propel it to be a success, or is going to either fail it, to be honest. And I think that's where I tend to get a lot of my strength from, because I've had a lot of compassion shown to me, and I try to emanate that by trying to give as much compassion as possible. And yeah, if compassion isn't in the aspect of like in your work in politics, then I don't think you're doing politics properly.
Do you want? Amazing. So everyone, you should start asking your question into the chat section for Magid. And meanwhile, because I know you usually take a bit of time before they digest everything. But Magid, do you want to share? Do you want to share some thoughts about?
What's that name?
What did you say?
I thought you said something, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, so, I mean, what it is to be a politician, according to you, Magid, because I think from what we understand here through your, through your story, it sounds like it really is about connected with different, communities.
You know, like the word politician, instantly, like, even when somebody used to refer to me as a politician, I didn't really like it, purely because my experience with politicians is so negative. I think even among society, like, politicians are one of the least trusted people in society. And it's just because politicians can lie and get away with it. Like, in any aspect of other normal people's work, if you lie, there's an element of punishment. Like, you can't just lie and get away with it, whereas politicians are always lying and deceiving, and people are sick and tired of that. And that's why I just try and, I guess, refer myself, even though I'm an elected politician in the sense of I've been elected and people I'm there to represent people. So like I'm more comfortable, I guess, with like referring to myself as an activist first and foremost, because like, like it's a lot of the people I know that have made some of the most fundamental changes in society aren't even politicians. So having a fancy title like an MEP or a mayor or anything like that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to basically you're gonna end up basically doing lots of great things. So it's just at the end of the day. So so that's why I sit a lot more comfortably with being an activist first and foremost.
But then what do you think about the idea that, so at the University of the Underground, we really are about like teaching you how to get into the systems, work within the system so that you can modify them from within. But it is true that in your case, it's very different than that, because I don't know of you having tried to fit within the kind of using the linguistics of, but then it's maybe a very naive vision, because actually I still believe that there is a bureaucracy, regardless of there's a big bureaucracy involved in being elected a mayor or being elected in anything.
Of course. And like with democracy, and we're like, people can say democracy is not the best form of governance, but it's the best that we've basically got at the moment. So it's, of course, I respect that, and I would like, whether that be legislation, whether that be within the responsibilities that I've got, whether that be how I vote, and like it's something that I guess I take quite seriously and I try to use within my capabilities. But I think also being a politician is about communication. Like, it's about communicating complex ideas to basically so basically people can understand it and people can feel like they are part of your decision making. And it's like, but at the same time, I'm not going to, I guess, be someone who's just going to fit into a jigsaw just to basically fit in so everyone else feels comfortable. Like, I've always seen my role as basically as a disruptor, just to disrupt things, but in a positive sense. I'm not going to go in there and start just making a racket and just being a nuisance, or whatever. I'm going to disrupt, whether that be being provocative by the questions I'm asking, whether that be method, the way I kind of people, or the way I conduct and using leverage of ordinary people. So it's just different ways, I guess, I try and be disruptive. But within that, I guess it's, as put it simply, it is doing things differently, and doing things differently can be scary. And trust me, I know there's a lot of people who will hate you for it, but at the same time, I promise you that there are going to be a lot of people who will love you for it, who will not just love you for it, but will actually join you in it. And even more importantly than that, I guess you can even risk changing the world in small ways, middle ways, or large ways in between. And this whole aspect of tradition, like, was something like I always used to get beaten with, like, oh, Magid, you never stick to traditions. You're always disrespectful. Like, traditions are man-made. Like, have tradition where women weren't allowed to vote. Like traditions come and go. We can make new traditions. And I always say, like, what is tradition if it isn't peer pressure from dead people? Like, it's not something that we have to kind of, I say, really kind of hold on to like it's that or anything else. I've always someone who's always willing to innovate and always challenge myself as well, just to make sure that I'm not basically just staying stale at the same time.
You have, Magid, there is Laulu, are you here? Laulu has got a question for you. Laulu. pop in on our screen, appear. Laolu, are you here?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yay!
Yes.
Hey.
I thought you were dancing for a second. That's a great.
Bring it on,
Hi,
Laolu.
Magid. So I was saying, is there any chance that there might be a repeat of your faith, or do you believe that you being in that office has sort of opened up, inclusion, life?
It's like you're speaking in slow motion.
Okay, hold on.
It's like I've got. I can.
Right back.
Okay, so I think we have a bad connection, but I don't know if it's not because of me. It might be my connection, no?
No, you're perfectly good. So basically, the question is: there any chance there might? Is there any chance there might be a repeat of it? I honestly think so. You think it's like for me, like it's. I've always tried. Like it was never. I could never settle for. I guess just even from a practical aspect, just being in that position and holding these responsibilities, and without basically opening the doors and supporting other people. So like in Sheffield, when I was mayor, I like mentored 10 people, and basically, not even necessarily just in politics, but basically I wanted to get involved in activism. And the same when I was in the European Parliament. So I'm always trying to, whether that be open doors that I've got access to now that I've not had access before for other people, and just trying to, I guess, be as supportive as much as I can. But I'd also like to think just by me being in that position and me being myself in those roles would have kind of opened up people's thinkings to be able to let them know that things can be done differently. It's like sometimes you've got to see it to be it in some sense. And I think like within Sheffield and within the region, I'd like, and it's not even necessarily me, there's so many other amazing activists who are constantly pushing the boundaries and who are always breaking down the doors. And I'd like to think that is having some sort of effect. And people can like look at politics and say, well, yes, I may have come from this background. I may have not even studied politics, but politics is something that I can get involved in. It's not necessarily reserved for a privileged few people. And
you have more questions coming in, but hold on, because I think Lauro is asking you a question as well about, or do you believe you being in the office has definitely opened up discussion for inclusion, or the door sort of closed shut after you left, philosopher must become king? Laulu always come up with the best line. Always.
I honestly, I think there is like, I think discussions of inclusion are definitely opened up. It's like one of the sad things in terms, I guess one of the good things that the Britain brought into like the MEPs, British MEPs were the most diverse set of MEPs in the European Parliament compared to other European member states. But the reality is, whether that's local politics or national politics, the people that we elect to represent us don't reflect the people that they are there to represent. If you look at the British government, if you look at the British cabinet, for example, 80% of them went to private schools. There were 80 or 9% of them are millionaires, and they all come from a certain class, and yet they make decisions that affects every single person in the UK. So how are they meant to understand what child poverty is and the effects of austerity and all these things? But so I think it's really important now more than ever. And I think things are starting to change, and I think people are starting to realize, I think people are getting fed up, in all honesty, and people are looking for alternative representation.
You have a question from Michaela after that. Michaela, are you here?
So you really caught me with your question about, or your comment about the connection between death as a response to like your friend's question, and how sort of embracing the fact that we're going to die allows room for individuality in a certain way. And so I'd be really happy, like I'd be really curious, like something that I'm also working on in my own research project is how our fear of death, which is actually the only thing that we know for certain influences political strategies, how it influences the way we view economics, etc. Because I'm working with that within the Israeli-Palestinian context.
Yeah. And then, like, I guess there's even room for religion, like but like regardless of what you believe in, like guaranteed, everyone's gonna basically die. And I guess like it's not something that came to me, and it's not something I kind of thought about as a strategy, in all honesty. But it just came to me because I just remember point of period when I was Lord Mayor, when I was just that scared of doing certain things or completely doing things different. And I knew that it was going to cause a lot of people weren't going to like it. It was going to cause a lot of difficulty. And at that point, I was just like, well, like, I'm going to die. Like, it's going to be so insignificant. It's like all these like things that are at that moment in time, the biggest thing to me, like, oh my God, like am I actually going to do this? Is like, it's completely kind of significant. And that's when I guess I really started to think a lot more about death as a coping mechanism. And at times I felt as if like, at times where I might feel really like scared of it, it kind of just gave me a bit of peace, just knowing that, listen, I'm going to die. And like, it's just a fleeting, like, it's just a passing feeling. So I'd always try to kind of remember the fact that, and I guess even like that really kind of changed my perspective in terms of how to make the most of the things I want to do or things that scare me or just life in general. So like, I always constantly just try to learn how to die daily, just to kind of constantly instill that in me. It's easy to forget. We can, like, at times, like, you can just feel fear is a real thing. Like, I don't think anyone can ever truly defeat fear. And because, like, fear is something that keeps us alive. We need fear in our life, but I think it's trying to have a positive or like some sort of working relationship with fear. So the fact that you can work together in some respect to kind of do the things that you want to do.
But it's also you know, a big thing into the political realm, like always to commemorate, you know, death. I mean, right now, like the French president is going around on his own, I guess, because nobody can really go in the street of Paris to commemorate the 8th of May right now, you know, like there is all of these ghosts of the past anyway. Mm-hmm. That always politicians kind of have to somehow, like, you know, when you become, I mean, I don't know, but maybe you expect, I mean, obviously you were, amongst all of us, you are the one that actually have experienced, you know, going and becoming, you know, a representative of, you know, citizens, let's say. Does it feel like when you arrive there, you also feel the responsibility of, in a way, taking on the weight of all the past history from all the past people that were in your shoe? Do you feel like you are also kind of a representative for this ghost, maybe? Or like, how does that work?
So like, I didn't necessarily like think about in terms of like people elected, like politicians that were working, that were MEPs or mayors before me. And even though I guess like, it's hard to miss them. Like if you come like Nelly, you would know, like in the Sheffield Town Hall, you've got portraits of all the previous mayors since 1820 or whatever. And like, you're constantly reminded because you're surrounded by like room of pictures of all these dead people, basically. So there is that aspect of them being there. But I guess it's like, in terms of like war, because the UK always love to kind of use metaphors, and like, even like Boris Johnson loves to kind of even to tackle this coronavirus is always like, we can't surrender to it. Or like, it's always using war metaphors to try and rally up people as if like we're like, it's, which I think, but yeah, I don't think necessarily something that I prescribe to, but at the same time, I appreciate the fact that there were a lot of people that died in World War I, World War II, that basically died, especially World War II, that said never again, like, lest we forget, never again that you're going to like tolerate fascism or any like aspects of that. So at times, I guess I do reflect back on a lot of people that have given up and paid the ultimate sacrifice, which is life, to defeat fascism and in Europe in World War II. So there is that aspect that sometimes I kind of recall, I guess even sometimes just to remind people basically, because especially in the UK, we have like Remembrance Sunday on the 11th of November every and every year, and people always politicize that, and they always use it to glorify war and never focus on the aspect of peace and making sure that we honor and respect those fallen soldiers in the best way, which is to basically work towards peace and make sure that nobody else has to suffer what they went through. And for me, that is the best way we can honor and respect them. But a lot of times politicians use it to glorify war and to kind of, at times, to use it as to intervene in foreign affairs and stuff like that, which is complete hypocrisy, in my opinion.
You have a question from Alexi. Alexi, are you here?
Hi.
Hey!
I guess I find you.
Yeah.
Your like step into politics is so inspiring because you traditionally like break everything that the UK politics is about. And I'm wondering like the defining moment you had and like the steps you faced in the beginning to like break down all the doors that you did. Because right now politics in the UK and America are just looking so dire and depressing, especially with the coronavirus. And any like real members of change at the top.
And at the beginning, it's honestly, it was I guess I was tired of complaining, and even though I didn't study politics or like in terms of like those people around me weren't political or anything like that, but I just kind of felt I just needed to do it more than anything else. And even though I didn't have the answers at the time, it was a case of educating myself and just going a lot of time, spending a lot of time and going online and kind of learning, honestly, of other people. And I would always use like my friends as soundboards. And a lot of the time, the one thing I guess I kind of noticed was people were, I guess, looking for something different. People were looking for something that they can, I guess, would kind of give them hope. And a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the stuff that I kind of use always positive messaging. I never tend to like campaign negatively or anything like that. And people like Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn, people that really kind of inspire me in every aspect. And people say, oh, they're kind of left populists, and but so be it. But they are literally, in my opinion, like they're listening to people. And I think at times people feel as if like a lot of politicians are there to for themselves, or career politicians, anything like that. But I guess it also helps the fact that my background kind of didn't make me feel privileged in any aspect whatsoever. And constantly surrounding myself with people who believed in me was really, really important, because like everyone doubts themselves. And at times I always used to have this imposter syndrome. And I always used to think any moment now someone's going to catch me out, realize I'm a fraud, and I'm going to basically be busted. But it was always constantly having to reaffirm myself and say, no, Magid, you belong here. Like this is, you're basically meant to be here. And it was, I guess, like, there's certain kind of moments in that aspect. Like, for example, one of them was like opening my fast in the Lord Mayor's parlor, thinking, like, God, like, I don't think the people who built this building in the 18th, whatever other words, ever thought that few years, like 100 years in the future, there would have been like a Black Muslim refugee who was representing the city of Sheffield, opening his fast in this parlor. And I think there's certain kind of things like that. Kind of like, well, it's easy, I always find, to kind of get lost in the source and kind of just get caught up in it. Whereas I've always just, I guess, been what am I doing next? I've never really, like, in honesty, this whole quarantine period has forced me to reflect and kind of have a time out, because I was never, I guess, like, at times, like, to my, it didn't work negatively, it didn't help me to not reflect. And I was always just going 100 miles per hour. But looking back and reflecting on things, it's like, I'm only able to have done what I've done through the support of so many other people, basically.
And did you start like by traditionally door knocking? And
Yeah, 100%. So like it was a case for me, I was always already someone who's embedded in my community. Whether that be like, I don't know, like it's within my nature just because I guess I'm quite inquisitive. I'm just, I'm a people's person in general. I was already embedded in my community, but in terms of when I was like, I'm going to put myself forward as a local councillor to get elected, it was an aspect of literally door knocking, like, because like, fair enough, other people might have lots of more money, they can put a lot of ads online and stuff like that, but one thing they can't beat is the ground game and actually having that dialogue and having that conversation with people. And at times it is having difficult conversation with people that don't necessarily agree with you. And that's something I welcome. I actually enjoy so much more than people who already kind of agree with me, because one person that doesn't agree with me is an opportunity. I see it, whether that be to change their mind or basically, or for me to learn something new, you know, honestly. So yes, it did involve a lot of door knocking, with a lot of just inspiring people and just literally just making it more of a people's focused campaign and not so much about myself per se.
But I guess right now we're quite interested in you, and I'm just wondering that I'm seeing that this wall is really empty. Like you were talking about the role of posters and you know, like,
Hey,
what's happening in this room? Ah, okay.
I'm just blocking it. Can you see the
yeah, I can see.
But you know, I've moved into this place like 4 weeks ago, so I'm still trying to like do what I can with it and whatnot. So
yeah, I mean, you got like you've got a big challenge ahead now. It's like, of course, you've got Corona, so to kind of try and find anything to put in your room, it's probably difficult.
But it forces me to be creative, so I'm sure I can come up with a few things.
Are you going to start getting into painting? So yeah, talking about that actually creatively. So I think it's important to say as well that you've been like starting a lot of residency when you were mayor of Sheffield too. Like, you know, there is Otis Mensah, who is like the poet in residence that came to do an event for the University of the Underground. You know, you really see the value of, you know, bringing in creative practice into politics or even in institutions. Can you speak a bit about that? And also dance, tell us about dance, because they're working on dance and we both met on the, I mean, we met in the toilet, but by a dance floor. You know, we met on the dance floor. It's nicer than saying we met in the toilet. But yeah, do you want to speak about that?
And for me, like arts and culture has always been, I guess, pivotal in me growing up. But in terms of even politically, when I was mayor of Sheffield, at every full council meeting, and full council meetings is when all the elected representatives get together and where we debate and where we pass and vote on different motions and make decisions that affects the city. And in every single of those meetings, which was once a month, I made a point by inviting local artists to come and perform in the council chamber, which has never happened before. And just to really highlight to the decision makers the importance of arts and culture within the city. So I would have a comedian do a set, and they would be there. At least I would have a shoe designer and like creating shoes. I would have a magician. I would have a musician. I would really just try and be as diverse as possible, just to really highlight that aspect to them. And you briefly touched upon Otis Mensah, and I guess one of the legacies I wanted to leave behind was I really was wanting a champion for Sheffield for the arts. So I appointed a poet laureate for Sheffield to do a 2-year term. And Otis Mensah is a poet in his own right. He's about to release his second book of poetry. He's also a hip hop artist that's performed in Glastonbury and all across Europe. And I appointed him as the poet laureate, which in terms of the poetry community in the UK, which can at times be full of white male mediocrity, and a lot of people were quite stuffy, were quite like negative, and would write articles saying it's kind of like he doesn't qualify to have the title of poet laureate. And they were like, Magid, what gives you the right to appoint him? Like, I didn't look for permission. I just wanted to do it, and I basically did it, and that role didn't exist. But Otis he represents everything that's great about Sheffield. He's young, he's radical, he's exciting, he's a breath of fresh air, and he disrupts, like even within like the poetry in the UK, and he's amazing and in every aspect. So in terms of dancing, Nelly was like, do I dance? Of course, I love to dance. I enjoy dancing. But in terms of like, I don't know. I don't like, I might do a bit of paso doble sometimes, Nelly, a bit of salsa, but I'm not like, I'm not really I love dancing, but I'm not that very well versed in it, to be honest.
Well, you have a full court here who is really well versed into dancing. But yeah, we will have turned up in your living room if, you know, if we weren't in this kind of time. But yeah, maybe we can organize like a group, you know, a group coming into your living room through the internet. So, I mean, talk to us a bit about the internet as well, because this is something that you and I talked about quite a bit. And, you know, all of them are coming from different countries. Everybody understands research differently. And I know from talking to you that for you, like you mentioned it, research is happening on the internet, research is happening on the YouTube channel, research is happening also there, like, and also talking to people and so forth. Like, do you want to tell me, like, let's say when you had to work on, I don't know, the implication or such and such rule, let's say in the, you know, the estates, blah, 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 how do you get on with that research level that you have to do? Because I'm guessing that you have tons of paperwork. Like, how do you research basically? What is your method? How do you do it?
In terms of like, honestly, the internet for me was a savior in some aspects. Growing up.
What about now? Now it's like, is it still?
Yeah, now, honestly, like, can you imagine being in a lockdown and with the whole world on lockdown without internet? like just the connectivity to be able to like connect with people is important, even though it's virtually.
Yeah, but what about the people that say that the 5G is giving us corona and all of this stuff? Because there is a lot of them on the internet as well.
There's been people in the UK that have been burning down the 5G towers and base. I mean, like, for me, I don't know like enough information to categorically say no, it doesn't. Like, I don't believe that it has an effect in coronavirus because it's a virus. I can't see how that links to 5G. But I could be proven wrong, but I just don't believe it, to be honest. In terms of research methods, honestly, I just tend to read quite a lot, and I go online and I watch a lot of videos and I consume, and then I come up with ideas and then I talk to people about it. And a lot of the times I like to read views and perspectives of people I don't agree with. And just to, I guess, because I tell that, like, the last thing I want to do, I guess, is just trying to live within an echo chamber and reinforce my own beliefs again and again and again, which was easily done in the whole, even in terms of politics, in the whole Brexit situation. Even campaigning, a lot of people were stuck in the bubble of just trying to persuade the same people and not really going out and connecting with people, even though they disagree with, to like find that common like mutual kind of agreement, what kind of like unites us more than anything else. So my research methods are just honestly reading and challenging my own views and basically just trying to put them to the test.
And so I'm guessing you're going to have a lot of that when your book is being released. When is your book being released? Because we're going to rush in the store to try and get it.
Nice. So it's coming out September the 3rd. So the base of the book is called The Art of Disruption, a manifesto for real change. And it's basically based on, when I was mayor, there's a big music festival in Sheffield called Tramlines Music Festival. And other music festival organizers asked me, Magid, if you can have a big board of, like, to have a message, you put what message you want on there. And I didn't know what to put on there, and I had like 2 hours to come up with a message, and it was the 10th year of the music festival anniversary. So I thought, something around 10, the number 10. So I came up with Sheffield's 10 Commandments. So like the Sheffield's 10 Commandments were like, number 1 was like, don't be a prick. So first was like, be kind, don't be a prick, do epic shit, see the good, don't lose hope, do it differently, always buy around, don't kiss a Tory, tell your mother you love her, you got it. So basically, like the book and the manifesto is based on those 10 commandments, but it kind of goes into it. So it is like a guide to being courageous, doing better, disrupting the age-old power structures in work, life, and in politics, using a lot of anecdotes as during my time in politics. So I guess if you're fed up with those in power and passively acting out the norm and always telling you, we've all, like, because you always get people say, we've always done it like this, then I guess this book might be of some interest. And yeah, there's a lot to kind of take away from it. So that'll be coming out in September. We'll see what the world is like in September, and we'll basically push it out. And I'll be.
And are you getting all of the Green Party, like, you know, calling you and trying to like get your perspective on things, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, so I've been like, honestly, since during the lockdown, I've basically, because like so many other people, we had lots of events and a lot of things planned which have been cancelled. So I've been involved in different panels, speaking at different events. Like I was like in different parts of the world, even though I'm in my living room. So I've basically been staying active and stuff.
And Alexis want to ask you another question as well, if you're willing to take it.
Yeah, sure.
So many questions. I guess I'm just curious because, especially I'm in America right now, and I'm watching the effects of like, I spend a lot of time reading right-wing, alt-right blogs. And we're during the election right now, and you see the traditional like campaigning on the TV, but you also see like crazy right-wing propaganda videos circulating all over Facebook. And so if someone's coming and running into politics and they don't have this huge like money backing, how do you fight against this political program that's happening right now that's persuading people that costs a lot of money, like Cambridge Analytica style?
Do you know, like, honestly, I find American politics really fascinating. It's like in the UK, we've got strict laws on how like much money you can spend on a campaign. So for a member of parliament, the most they can spend is £25,000. And the political party can spend up to like, I think, £2 million. But in America, it's open season, like, and that's why there's correlation between the most people that get elected in terms of how much money they can spend on stuff, which it's completely frustrating. And I can tell you about my gripes with the DNC and the Democratic Party and how they keep shooting themselves in the foot every single time and propping up someone like Joe Biden, who isn't even, can't even string a sentence together at times. And it's like, to be an American citizen and to be told that the two best people in America who can serve you is either Donald Trump or Joe Biden. You're like, what? Like, how is this our option? Like, how's it come to the fact that this option? And it's like, honestly, like, is like I think like a lot of people that were voting for Bernie Sanders, I think like a third, like, by the way, I get a lot of my information from people like the Young Turks or the Hill or like certain kind of outlets. Like, I say, like, a lot of people aren't supporting the normal like major two political parties. If you're outside and connected, they don't feel like they've got a voice in politics anymore. And a lot of it comes down to like propaganda. Like, how do you beat this if everyone's spreading fake news? And it's honestly, it's difficult unless there's laws that kind of, it's going to be basically difficult. Or like education is one aspect. For me, like, it's so important. I always push in the UK the fact that if we can get young people involved in politics early, just like, for example, lowering the voting age to 16, so 16, 17-year-olds to vote. In the UK, you can join the army, you can legally get married, you can do so much, yet you're not entitled to basically vote. And I would argue at times that like voting is, at times can be a skill, but you need to educate people. So it's like if people are educated from an early stage, people be able to sift through all the bullshit that they get through the media and propaganda through the right-wing press and stuff like that. And they'll be able to say, well, no, that's clearly bullshit. Let me kind of look into it. At the same time, I feel like the people have got responsibilities within ourselves. So like, I've got friends, like, they're not close friends, but I know people who support right-wing views. And some people is within their families and their friends, their work spaces. So joining, also just having literally speaking out to those people rather than relying people to get that information and through online mediums and whatnot. door knocking, getting involved in, or not, even literally just having conversations, speaking to people, I think helps.
Thank you.
Magid, are you here? Ah, no. Redacted tonight. Can you hear me? Redacted tonight with Lee Camp is an interesting source for alternative voice in the US. That's Christopher telling us now. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well,
you know, one of my favorite philosophers, a guy called Brother Cornel West. I don't know if anyone's kind of come across Cornel West. And he was one of the surrogates for Bernie Sanders, but he's also a professor at Harvard. But honestly, he's basically incredible, and I would recommend everyone to check out his work.